We're Sean and Sharon with Good Sweet Homes. And before we get started, we want to give a huge shout out to Brian, Maggie, and the entire AHN team for putting this whole event together. So let's give them one big round of applause. And we've been personal friends of Maggie and Brian's for several years now, and they've been gracious enough to have us come by to share our stories and share our approach to financial freedom and life in general.
Now, for those of you who don't know us, we are the founders of Good Sweet Homes, where we help people build generational wealth through real estate investing and also become financially free. And we're real estate investors with 34 units across the nation around California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. And we're content creators with a combined 3.5 million followers across YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Now, a few weeks ago, one of our friends actually asked us, hey, how do you spend your time? How do you guys get so much done? And we actually looked at each other confused because, this is kind of how we've been spending our time. We play video games a lot. We wake up with no alarms. We'll travel every month. I even started streaming for fun. And we'll work on things we care about, like real estate and teaching about personal finance. But we're also okay if we don't do so much. And I don't even know how Sean's sleeping here with his legs up, but yeah.
So before you guys come at us hey, we're at the Asian Hustle Network Conference. Why are we hearing about this stuff from such lazy people? Well, don't get us wrong. We did spend a lot of time to get to where we are today. But we find that for people like us who like to hustle and grind all the time, we don't often take the time to pause and think back on why we're doing what we're doing. So we wanted to talk about this today because if we don't, we're always going to find ourselves in a cycle of always going for the next goal, but also feeling regret if we're not hustling all the time. So today we're going to talk about our core philosophies to life, and to show you how we got to our decisions, we're going to talk about what we do.
So this is the motto that guides the way we live our lives. It's called Ideals, and it means I don't enjoy average life. Shit. And when I say average lives, I really mean we don't want to live a life with regrets. You may have heard this before, but in her book, author Bronnie Ware mentions these are the top 5 regrets of the dying. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. And I wish I had let myself be happier. Now, if these are the regrets that most people have before they die, then logically, these are the things we should avoid in order to live a full life.
So knowing this, we decided to work backwards and start asking ourselves these empowering questions. How will I prioritize my life over work? What would life look like if I only lived for myself instead of others? How can I express my true feelings? Who are my real friends, and how can I nurture those relationships? And finally, what makes me truly happy? So we need these to be the guiding questions of our lives, and I don't think we think about this enough on a regular basis. So to show you how we got to this conclusion, we're going to share with you our journeys.
So back in 2012, before I met Sean, I just graduated college, as you can see me on the left. And I started working at my first job, just making $30K a year. And I was in my little cubicle in the office, looking at the 4 walls of an office. And I'm gonna be real, within 2 weeks, I was over it. I was like, is this really what people do? I realized that most people were working in 9-to-5s that they hated, only to spend all their income, and then they get scared of losing those things if they didn't have the job, so they're dependent on their jobs, and then they're forced to stay there forever. And in 2015, I actually wrote this post. At the end, I write, as I drive down this path, I say to myself, this may be my future. These same trees, these same buildings, this empty space, I'm going to see this every day. I'm going to drive to work every day while my years slip away and my life will continue on this mundane route. I was shocked that people just work till 65, and I asked myself, is this going to be the rest of my life? And I just felt like I was doing the same thing over and over again, not truly living.
So around the same time in 2012, I was working full-time as an intern for a large defense contracting company. And I'm not gonna lie, I actually enjoyed my job back in the day. But as I was working there, I felt like I was doing a lot of work, and I felt like I was one of the most productive members of my team. But then one day, I heard that my grandpa was getting sick. He was approaching 100 years old, and my family knew that he probably wasn't gonna make it. So I figured maybe I should take some time off of work to go visit him. But since I was working in Los Angeles at the time, that means taking a few days off. And I called my dad and said, hey, should I make this trip? And he said, you know what, son? Just continue working hard, stay at your job, be a good employee. And so I did that. And while the rest of my family went to go visit my grandpa, I stayed behind for work. And while I was working, he passed away. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I felt sadness, guilt, and regret because this was my grandpa, and I stayed behind for a job. And that's when I realized that no job is going to matter more to me than family, because a job won't be there for you like family will. In fact, you can't even rely on a job to take care of you for the rest of your life. I've heard of one story from a coworker who had given up multiple opportunities throughout his career to jump jobs, start his own business, because he wanted to stay with his company for their juicy retirement package, only to be let go 2 years before he qualified. So, yeah, that sucks. So I realized that family will be there for you, so we choose to prioritize family and health over working so hard. So think about how you guys will prioritize your life over work.
Now, knowing there was more to life than a 9-to-5, I wanted to see the world. So in 2014, I took a month-long solo Europe trip, and it truly opened my eyes. I'd been living in the Bay Area, California all my life, and in my own little bubble, but once I traveled, I realized how small I was and how little I knew. When I talked to people, they'd tell me about how they were playing music with their bands or backpacking across the globe. People were living in the moment, doing things with their lives. That's when I realized time and freedom were way more important than money. And I realized I had to get out of the 9-to-5 to experience life fully. And I asked myself, how can I permanently live a life of freedom? So I came home from that trip, I started researching, I learned more about side hustles, investing, achieving financial freedom. I'd actually bought a rental property back in 2013, and that showed me just how powerful passive income was. I then stumbled upon this term called the digital nomad who works remotely while traveling. And before COVID, this whole idea of being a digital nomad, remote work was not common, right? But I was hooked, and I just watched these digital nomad YouTubers, and I just envisioned my life abroad. So in 2015, I bought a one-way ticket to Stockholm 6 months out. I said, this is going to be my deadline. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to quit my job. And then I was obsessively working. I would pick up 2 part-time remote positions while I was at my full-time job. I started figuring out how to sell digital products on Etsy, blog, and write Kindle books. I just needed to see if I could succeed in making some passive income. And then when I just made $50 to $100 a month passively, that was enough proof for me that I'd figure it out. Now, this is the caveat to I wish I hadn't worked so hard. If you find your calling, you're going to do what you can to make it happen. It'll require persistence and dedication, but if it's really your dream or higher purpose, you're going to wake up excited to do it. In my case, I had a dream for financial freedom, so I spent every waking hour on that upfront work to achieve it. By May of 2016, I pulled the trigger, I quit my day job, and I ended up solo traveling for 2 years, living month to month in new places like Greece, Romania, Thailand, Portugal. And I would spend days working at cafes, even at the beach sometimes, and I was able to build multiple passive income streams that supported my journey, and I ended up increasing my net worth after traveling. This all sounds exciting looking back, but at the time, I was extremely scared and alone. For the longest time, I only told one friend about what I was doing because most of my friends were climbing the corporate ladder, doing the traditional route, and they just wouldn't understand what I was going through. My mom even cried when I asked her about health insurance abroad. She thought I was joking the whole time, and then she realized I was serious that moment I asked her. And they just thought I was insane, that everything I was doing was unsafe. So everyone was telling me to go the normal route, but I just wouldn't listen.
Yeah, and my dream for financial freedom had me on a similar route, you know? I remember distinctly having a phone call with my mom and her being distraught because I was telling her that I wanted to leave my full-time job as an engineer to become an entrepreneur. And like most Asian moms, she was terrified that I was going to be making a big mistake that I couldn't recover from. Because here I was, a good kid who had just graduated with a master's degree in electrical engineering, and I was willing to give that all up to try my hand at some business that didn't even exist yet. To be honest, she was right, because again, I didn't even know what I wanted to do at the time, just that I didn't want to live and work at a corporate job for the rest of my life. So she told me that I wasn't allowed to quit my job until I had a business that actually started making some money, which I thought was fair. So I tried several different business ventures. My first one was a startup company with my friends. We tried to create a Craigslist competitor to make better website for UCLA college students to buy and trade goods from themselves. We called it search by repeat, which then became double dibs. And we tried some viral marketing techniques like creating some fake $100 bills, throwing them around campus, getting people to pick them up and keep them in their wallets. I also went on campus and got people to try a website like right then and there. I also tried my hand on e-commerce by trying to sell selfie sticks online, creating this whole thing with Alibaba and vendors and whatnot, and then getting all my friends to create fake 5-star reviews on my listing. Now, unfortunately, none of these things actually worked out. But around this time, my mom was thinking of retiring and moving back to Taiwan, and she was thinking of selling my childhood home back in the Bay Area. And I said, no, I want to keep the properties in the family, so how can I buy the home from her? So we figured that all out. That funded her retirement, and this property actually got me started with real estate investing. The plan was originally to just rent this property out as like a long-term rental since I was working in LA at the time. But it just so happened that the company that I was working for was looking for someone to move to the Bay Area, and everyone above me said no, and I said yes, I'm willing to move. So when I moved back to the home in the Bay Area, I realized that there are many rooms out there, and I wondered if I could make some extra money by renting out some of these rooms. So I made a Facebook post, and this guy right here, Mr. Brian Pham, became my first roommate/tenant. So that's why Brian and I are so close. Now, over time, I eventually rented out the rest of the rooms to other friends, coworkers, friends of coworkers. And the cool thing is, though, even though their individual rents by the room weren't that much, combined, it actually covered the entire mortgage payment. So that lit a light bulb off in my head. And I started to understand the power of real estate investing. Like, if you buy it correctly, you can buy a property with just 20% down and have the tenant's rent pay for the mortgage, insurance, property taxes, and give you some cash flow on the side. It just made total sense to me, and I wondered why more people weren't doing it. But just like Sharon was saying, none of my friends were buying real estate at the time, and my dad was even hesitant to encourage me to buy properties out of state because he thought it was too risky. So I had to read a lot of books, do a lot of self-study, join meetup groups, and then eventually, yes, I was comfortable enough to then buy my first property.
The second regret of the dying is I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. Both Sean and I had people telling us not to pursue the road less taken. We had doubters, we had people who didn't understand us, telling us it was all impossible. It's so easy to push down your callings and take that traditional route when you don't get that support you need. But a huge part of why we've been able to do what we do is because we took the scary routes. There's this quote that says, "Beautiful thing about fear is when you run to it, it runs away." And I find that when I have fear around something that continuously calls to me, it's usually a sign for me to do it.
So once you identify what you want, take those steps to get to where you want to be. In Sharon's case, she made that one-way ticket, she booked a one-way ticket to Stockholm, and then she realized what she had to do to get there. And for me, it was something as simple as volunteering to be the check-in boy for my local real estate meetup groups. Because when I was first going to real estate meetups, people didn't really want to talk to me once they found out that I was only an aspiring investor. But by volunteering, I was able to talk to the meetup host and provide value to him. And so in turn, he was able to answer any of my questions about the business. So when you find something that you want to do, don't be afraid to take those steps, even though they may be scary or embarrassing at the time.
Now, in 2019, we met through an app called Coffee Meets Bagel, if you guys have heard of it. But before we met, I had actually taken this course called How to Build a Better Life by Mark Manson, and it told me to write down all the important domains in my life and break that into 5-year, 1-year, monthly, weekly, daily milestones. And this is what mine looked like. I had financial freedom, self-development, real estate, relationships, and marketing as my domains at the time. So this is my relationships one broken out. And as you can see, my weekly goal was to meet new people each week. So in order for me to hit my goals, I had all my apps going, right? I had Tinder, Coffee Meets Bagel, Bumble, Hinge, meeting a new guy every week at minimum. Sometimes it was 2 to 3 dates I was juggling. It was a total grind. I was basically making my own Asian hustle network. But I figured if I wanted to find my soulmate, if I went on 1 date a week, that's 52 chances a year I'm going to find the one, right? And after months of this experiment, I learned more and more of what I wanted. And I learned to stop entertaining the maybes. Maybe it'll work out, or maybe my interest will grow for this person, because it never worked out if it wasn't a for sure yes. So when Sean came along, I knew I had to express my interest. On the first date, I let him know, hey, I had a really nice time tonight.
Yeah. And after the end of every one of our dates, I made sure to schedule the next time we would meet up, so there'd be no guessing. And after a few weeks, she actually came up to me and was like, hey, what are you looking for here? And I was like, all right, here we go. Time to DTR, or define the relationship. But instead of playing it cool, I laid all my cards on the table, and I said, look, this might sound cheesy, but I'm looking for you. And I deleted all my apps after our first date, and now we're married.
The third regret of the dying is I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. Now, it's very important to find the right partner, because you could either be stuck with someone who makes your life and entrepreneurial journey a lot harder or a lot easier. And because we weren't afraid to wait and express our feelings for the right person, we were able to find each other. But that doesn't end there. Now, in this quote, it mentions, don't keep all your feelings sheltered, express them. Don't ever let life shut you up. In relationships, we realize that it's important for us to always tell each other what we're feeling and what we need from each other.
And this applies to our working relationship as well. So working together, we quickly established that I prefer the more extrovertive and operational tasks, while Sharon prefers more big picture strategizing and thinking. So, even when I'm pissing her off or not doing what she's telling me to do, she's not going to be afraid to let me know.
In the right relationship, you won't be afraid to be yourself, because you'll be accepted for who you are. And not just relationships, but in life in general. Ask yourself, how can I truly express my feelings? Am I stifling my emotions, or am I actually expressing my true self? Now, let's see. Okay.
So this leads us to the fourth regret of the dying, which is I wish I stayed more in touch with my friends. And as we've gotten older, we found that friendships have been one of the hardest relationships to maintain. Can anyone relate to this? We've had friends who suddenly drop off the face of the earth once they get coupled up. We have friends who don't hang out with other people. They only prefer to hang out with successful people because their friends aren't as successful as they are. We also know some friends who like to ball out every time they go out, so it makes it uncomfortable to hang out with them because you're going to have to break the bank just to hang out. So we want to make sure that we don't end up like those people.
So we spent time considering who has had our backs from the start, who's been there through the ups and downs. Those true friends love you for who you are, not for who they want you to be. And we also asked, what can we do to ensure that we don't isolate ourselves from our friends?
And we never let fame or wealth matter in this equation, because what happens if these external things are taken away from us? So we want to make sure that we're in circles where these things don't really matter. And ask yourselves, who are your friends, and how can you continue nurturing those relationships? Because true friends will be there for you no matter what.
In 2022, Sean and I had built our real estate portfolios and businesses to a point where we were able to leave the 9-to-5 world. But even though we were technically financially free, I was getting anxiety trying to keep up with other content creators. I'd wake up feeling worried, feeling like I had to work on content, or I'd feel bad about myself.
And I had this very strange sensation of feeling lost in my life because for the longest time, I was working hard and hustling just so that I wouldn't have to have a day job. But once I accomplished that goal, I wasn't sure what to do next.
And this reminded me of 2018 when I was in Chiang Mai, Thailand, nearing the end of my travels. I was there for like 4 months or so. I'd built my passive income streams to a point where I thought I'd made it. I could sustain that lifestyle forever, but I didn't feel fulfilled from the cash flow alone. It didn't make me happy doing nothing, and it also didn't make me happy chasing numbers, thinking about what's the next passive income milestone. I realized I needed more fulfillment and purpose in my life.
So the last regret of dying is, I wish I let myself be happier. You think that money and financial freedom alone would solve all of your problems, but you'll soon realize that if money is like your main goal, then it's never going to be enough, and you're always going to have this next thing to look up to. But again, you're going to feel bad if you don't do anything about it.
In this quote, Jim Carrey mentions, "I hope everybody could get rich and famous, will have everything they ever dreamed of, so they'll know that it's not the answer." We realize that financial freedom isn't the ultimate goal, it's a means to an end. For one, if you make money the ultimate goal, no matter how hard you grind, your benchmark for success will keep changing. And then if you sit there doing nothing after achieving financial freedom, you might watch your life pass by and you didn't pursue those things that would have made you happy. I actually listened to this presenter at a conference talking about having 101 goals. And the speaker was the author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, and he said that by having 101 goals, you're taking an active role on shaping your future. So I thought it'd be fun to create this long bucket list to start tackling my goals as soon as possible.
And so you can see here, Sharon is trying her hand at being a farmer with her hydroponic vegetables, but she's also doing her goal of going back and creating music, which she took a pause on for a while. And for me, I love EDM, but I didn't know what to do with it for a long time. So lately, we've actually joined a local shufflers meetup group. So now we can actually do some stuff at the clubs. So basically, we're deliberately doing the things that we enjoy doing that we were too busy to do before. And we're also learning how to truly immerse ourselves in joy without feeling that guilt.
That's why we're okay with playing video games in the middle of the day or going to 5 escape rooms in 1 week, which we actually did last month, because it makes us happy. Everyone's ideal life is different, so just stay on your lane and don't worry about what other people are doing. In 2018, I actually pictured my ideal life 5 years from now. I wrote down every detail of what I wanted for myself and not for others, and I wrote down the milestones to get there. And now that it's 5 years later, I found that I've been able to achieve most of what I wrote, like getting married, achieving financial freedom so that I can travel, work on the things on my bucket list, own rental properties around the nation where I can reinvest the cash flow. I'm even working on music and then doing random things like gardening, as Sean mentioned. We're even moving to Taiwan at the end of the year for a few months to do a language immersion program to get better at Chinese. There's power in writing and manifesting your ideal life. The journey of life has unexpected twists and turns. There's going to be ups and downs. You never know what's going to happen. But for what you can control, you should take intentional choices towards shaping your future.
So even though we may not appear to be these fierce hustlers that burn the midnight candle to make more money, we're also not the flashiest people. We don't drive the most extravagant cars. We're living lives that are true to ourselves because that's what makes us happy. So we'll leave you guys all with this. As you guys are pursuing financial freedom and building your businesses, set goals with realistic timelines and create a plan for where you want to be. But also remember to ask yourself these questions. How will you prioritize your life over work? Maybe you're going to spend more time with family, or maybe you'll designate a time to put pencils down so you can step away from work for the day. What would your life look like if you only live for yourself and not for others? Just imagine the amazing things that you can accomplish if you only listen to yourself. How can you express your true feelings? Is there something that you're not saying because you're too scared? Be honest with yourself and those around you. Who are your real friends, and how can you nurture those relationships? Maybe there's an old friend of yours that you haven't hit up in a long time. Give them a call. I'm sure they're going to want you to say hi. And finally, think about what makes you truly happy and what you can do to accomplish it. You guys only have one life to live. How will you choose to live your ideal life? Thank you, guys.